Oklahoma and Texas will be joining the SEC in 2024 now. How scared are you?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, how are you today?
Scared about Oklahoma and Texas. Intrigued, not scared. I'll explain more.
Okay, well, I'll just go ahead and let you explain more right now because Oklahoma and Texas will be here in 2024. You know, this was something that was decided the other day, about a week after the news story was that, hey, they may not be here till 2025 and nobody's blinking. And I think you and I, even on this podcast, said that's not going to be the way this goes. There's too much money at stake. This is stupid for them not to be here in 2024. Okay, you're not scared. I don't even think you really need to explain it, so I'm going to cut you off because there's really no reason to. I mean, we've played Oklahoma and Texas recently and beaten them, so we'll play Texas again this year.
Well, I think, first of all, I think people are crazy if they don't think Texas and Oklahoma will have success in the SEC at some point. Of course they will. Texas will win the SEC at some point. Oklahoma will win we've added teams like A&M, South Carolina, even Arkansas. None of these teams have won the SEC. Missouri, they haven't won the SEC. This time the additions will. Oklahoma will win the SEC in football. Texas will win the SEC in football at some point. There's no question that's true. So in that sense, if you want to be scared about it, I mean, there's your reason. They're really good programs. They're going to be even better in the SEC with the way the SEC recruits. It's just going to add to their success in terms of building a roster. But here's the thing. At the same time Texas and Oklahoma are showing up, the playoff is expanding. You don't have to win the SEC to make the playoff. Had Texas and Oklahoma joined during the BCS years, I don't know if scared is the right word, but it would be more appropriate because now in the BCS, you better win the SEC to show up. Alabama know what it took for that to happen. But even under the CFP, 2 SEC teams have made it before. 2, you better be top 2 for sure. Well, now you don't even have to be top 2. So with Texas and Oklahoma showing up, sure, it's going to make a more hyper-competitive conference. It's going to be harder than ever to win the SEC. But now you just don't have to win the SEC to make the playoff. You don't even have to finish in the top 2. So Texas and Oklahoma showing up at a good time in terms of the playoff field expanding.
Our good buddy Zach Blackerby of Locked On Auburn actually had a podcast the other day about how Oklahoma and Texas come into the league really hurts Auburn. And I think that's true. I think in a sense, you could say it hurts about everybody because it's not like you're getting 2 Vandys coming in here, Vandy 1 and Vandy Part 2. You're getting a couple of teams that are historically top 10 programs in the country, if not top 5. So I think in that regard, you could look at it and say, yeah, it's going to be tougher for everybody. But I think his point was, look, it's even tougher for Auburn considering that they aren't as blue blood as those guys and Alabama is. But it's going to be tough for everybody. That being said, who would you like now that the schedule is going to be – they said the schedule should come out in May or something like that.
Right.
And it's funny, they keep talking about not using pods, but all I keep hearing is everybody will have 3 permanent opponents. So it's a single pod, you just don't want to call it that. Okay, that's fine. So who will our non-pod pod be?
Our non-pod pod? Yeah, if Alabama has 3 permanent opponents, my guess would be Auburn, Tennessee, and probably Mississippi State. If that third opponent is someone else, like Ole Miss, like Oklahoma or Texas, to be frankly, I'm not going to be shocked if Alabama is sort of loaded on here. I mean, you shouldn't do this in terms of, hey, who's good now, because these things are all cyclical, but who's good now is going to be a factor to some extent. But I think it'll be Auburn, Tennessee, Mississippi State. That's my answer. But I'll only be surprised if Auburn and Tennessee aren't among the three.
In my opinion, Auburn, Tennessee, Mississippi State for Alabama is the easiest decision of all the permanent opponents. Number one, I think Alabama's played Mississippi State more than any of those others or anybody else in the SEC, I think. Auburn is certainly a rivalry that's not going away, and Alabama-Tennessee is a rivalry that's not going away. It's one of the more historic ones in the conference. Alabama's played Tennessee more than they have Auburn. So I think Alabama's got the easiest one. I mean, there's some other ones that are a little more difficult.
Right.
I think certainly Auburn, you'll have Alabama, Georgia, and then who? You hate to make it. I mean, so I've seen some Auburn people say, hey, I'd love to have Florida back. I mean, and really it doesn't matter who you're – it kind of does, but it kind of doesn't because you're going to have – now we're going to go to – we're all assuming we're going to 9-game – so I think that even if you have a Vandy or whatever every year, your schedule is going to be a bear no matter what. So, and you got 12 teams that get in the playoffs, so it doesn't matter quite as much, and it may actually behoove you to have Georgia, Florida, Alabama if you're Auburn.
Who are Vandy's three? Because, I mean, to me, Vandy, let's be honest, based on what we've seen over Vandy's history the last 30, 40 years, they're a bye. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean. They're a bye.
The Vandy's easy, too, if you ask me. Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Kentucky.
Tennessee, Ole Miss for sure, Kentucky. But here's the thing. One of the things we're doing, by the way, Texas and Oklahoma will obviously play each other. Texas will play Oklahoma and Texas A&M. But, boy, if you're playing Oklahoma and Texas A&M, you better give Texas – you might want to give Texas Vanderbilt if they got to play Texas A&M and Oklahoma every – Oklahoma, they're playing Texas every year, maybe Arkansas every year. And is Arkansas going to play LSU? And I'm just saying a few SEC teams are going to have two really tough games. They're going to want Vandy to be that third, But I'm with you. I think for Vandy, two for sure is Tennessee and – Ole Miss, because there's a long history of Ole Miss, Vandy, probably Kentucky for that third one, probably.
I think one thing that I've seen that's interesting would be Oklahoma, Florida. Now that logistically doesn't make a ton of sense, but I mean Oklahoma's not going. I don't think it's not going to be as interesting, I should say, if you give Oklahoma, Missouri, and Arkansas and Texas. That's just not that interesting. Now, what I could see is like A&M gets Texas, Oklahoma, and LSU. I mean, that makes some logistic sense. Then maybe Oklahoma gets Texas A&M, Texas, and Florida. I could see that.
Again, brutal.
I'm not saying it's not brutal. I'm just saying, there's only so many Vanderbilts to go around, Jimmy.
Exactly.
And so, but if you're Georgia, I think if you're Georgia, you certainly want to keep Auburn in the mix. We've already talked about that. I think you keep Florida in the mix for sure. And then South Carolina, Tennessee, I mean, I guess that makes the most sense. If you're Florida, you obviously would have Georgia. Then you'd under my scenario, you'd have Oklahoma. Then what do you do? LSU? And then, but by that, I mean, again, I don't have this all written down, which would probably be a smart thing to do considering we're running a podcast and we should do homework, but we're not gonna. So I quit doing homework about the 8th grade, even though I finished school and went to college. But so, man, Florida could have LSU, Oklahoma, and Georgia. Good Lord. I mean, best of luck, bruh. I mean, who would
this is what I want. I hope Alabama's 3 or Vandy, Missouri, and Kentucky. I mean, I hear you. The playoff. I want to make the playoff. I'm not going to ask my favorite team to play the toughest schedule in all of college football, but you better not lose a game. I mean, what the hell, man? I mean, some people's attitude is literally like that, by the way. And come on. I mean, make it fair. Make it within and put a little more on Alabama than you'd put on Vandy. I get that. But it needs to be equitable and fair as you can make it.
Jimmy, let me tell everybody about FanDuel. We're at the midway point of the NBA season. It's here midway. I mean, I think the All-Star game is this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a perfect time to download FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book, the official sports book partner of the NFL and the NBA. Just download FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe. It's super easy to use. It's secure. And then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to the number of three-pointers made, all that stuff. You can do it at FanDuel.com/locked-on, FanDuel.com/locked-on. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked-on, FanDuel.com/locked-on. Just go there. You'll learn more about it. Get that no-sweat first bet. It's so easy, so much fun. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA and the NFL. Also, go check out. Yang checked out Locked On College Basketball. Locked On College Basketball, so much fun. Really enjoying it. It's even better when your team's #1 in the country. Hey, because they're going to talk about you a lot. Hey, I don't know why I'm talking like I'm a Canadian. Hey, hey, or hey, whatever they say. Anyway, I'm sort of Southern Canadian when you say hey, I guess.
Probably say hey.
But go check.
I think they say both.
They say both. So go to Locked On College Basketball. You'll love it. Jimmy, we're sort of on a roll with this, but and one thing we don't talk about much, everybody talks about the football schedule, about these two guys, Oklahoma and Texas, joining the SEC. Basketball-wise, goodness gracious. I mean, look, I know Oklahoma's having a bit of a down year this year, except for the time they play us. They did win last night. They beat, was it Kansas State they beat last night? They beat somebody last night. That was a big deal. And they beat them by like 14. Oklahoma is really weird right now when it comes to basketball. But they are having a down year, but they historically been very, very good. Texas is a top 10 team. They look really strong. They lost Texas Tech this week, but notwithstanding, they're still very strong. And so these two programs joining in basketball is huge. These two programs joining in baseball is huge. Joining in softball, God. I mean, the SEC just gets better and better and better, and it's going to help on so many levels. And Oklahoma is awesome in gymnastics. I don't know how Texas is. I never hear about them, but I know Oklahoma is really good in gymnastics. So, this is going to have a ripple effect all across, and I think it helps increase Alabama's visibility in terms of recruiting those areas too.
Yeah, I hate to break it to Auburn, but Texas and Oklahoma are all everything schools. So Auburn, you have company. You have company, Auburn. Texas and Oklahoma are showing up to take your claim to fame. And then they have real legit claims to fame. They're very, very good. I mean, national champion. Texas and Oklahoma are national championship good in multiple sports, if not all sports. There are one of the reasons Texas and Oklahoma, I think I love the fit in the SEC, is that reason. They're good at everything on purpose. They want to be really good at every sport, which sounds like an SEC principle where it just means more, right? So obviously all the attention will be on football. I get that. We get that. We practically want that. We're football first people ourselves, but it is fun for softball, baseball, golf. Oklahoma, I think, won the National Gymnastics Championship just last season and just beat Alabama this past weekend in a 4-team meet in Fort Worth. Texas baseball, unbelievable, a national championship contender. The SEC baseball is nuts. Texas and Oklahoma have inexplicably made it harder because they're with the best teams in the country that are not in the SEC. It's a heck of an addition. The SEC is just unquestionably tough. Now the Big Ten's very good too with their additions, but I don't know. Texas and Oklahoma are better at sports than USC and UCLA are. Now,
there's no
USC
doubt. Even though
they're good at the Olympic sports too, USC and UCLA, but I don't know that they're as good as Texas and Oklahoma.
I think USC and UCLA are really good at thinking they're better than those at sports, but they're not.
Right.
Anyway. So one other thing I wanted to bring up here, looking back on Bama Online, they talked about Alabama updating its online football roster. It added all the 26 early enrollees, the 22 true freshmen, the 2 junior college, and the 2 Power 5 transfers. There isn't it's certainly not a lot of news here, and there are no numbers yet, which is something it may be stupid to get excited about, but I get excited about seeing the numbers. I just love it. I love seeing finally putting a name with a number. But there's some interesting name changes. Cornerback Desmond Ricks he's listed. This is how he's listed on the roster. Des Ricks, and not D-E-Z. 2 Z's, like Des Ricks. I think that's a good way to separate yourself. Then Jamarian Miller. He is no longer Jamarian. He is Jam Miller.
I love it.
I like that.
Especially if I'm not a big fan of it if it's a nickname like, what we call him? We call him the Piston. No, but Jam, if everyone, including his mama, calls him Jam and it's Jamarian, then put Jam, put Dez. I mean, that's what people call them. Or how many people call Michael Mike or Robert Bob? To me, it's fine to go by your nickname if it's part of your name on the roster. Kool-Aid's a little different, but they've been calling Kool-Aid that since his birth, and NIL.
And why Kool-Aid doesn't have, or does he have an NIL deal with Kool-Aid? It makes
He does.
Okay, he does. That's right. He should.
He does. And Jam Miller has set himself up nicely.
Smuckers, where are you at?
Plus, he's going to be a significant player.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, here's the one that makes a little less sense unless he has a tie-in with the city of Montgomery, Alabama. Raquez, am I saying that right? Did we ever get a Raquez McElderry?
He goes Raquez McElderry. That's how.
Okay. Okay. He is in the program or in the roster. He is now Rock with a Q, ROQ Montgomery. And again, that's not.
I was aware people called him Rock. I was aware of that. So I think this is a well-known nickname, and it's not a, hey, you know what? I just don't like my name. Let's go with this. It's a well-known nickname, and since he kept the Q, it's still his name-ish. I like it. And
I like
now we
that
can do
name.
an NIL deal with Dwayne Johnson.
But what's the deal with Montgomery? Is there what's the deal with Montgomery? I guess we just got to find out later. We'll find out. So AL.com will get bored this summer and do a story on it, I'm sure, because they hurt for stories like everybody else. But there's got to be some kind of family tie-in there. To go from McElderry, which I guess a lot of people were saying McElderry or McElderry, and he probably was like, look, let's do something easy. But not too easy, because that'd be too much of a change. Let's not go to Smith or Jones. Let's go to Montgomery. Kind of long, starts with an M. It works.
I remember, it may be the same thing. It may be something unrelated. I don't know. But I remember Derek Lassick did not show up to Alabama. Derek Lassick. Do you remember? I remember his last. Do you remember it?
Okay, wait a minute. Yes, I do remember, because it was when I was in school, and I remember when we signed him out of New York, and I was so excited. God, I can't remember. Tell me.
Derek Owens.
Derek Owens. I knew that.
And then for a while, he went by Derek Owens Lassick for a while.
That's right. What was Jalen Simpson? Jalen Simpson was also something else. It may have been Jalen Bluebell for the ice cream.
Garth.
Juwan, not Jalen. Juwan
Garth, and then became Juwan Simpson. So it's happened before. Probably, I'm guessing, for similar, dad, stepdad, mom, stepmom reason, something like that. But yeah, it is. When you've kind of gotten used to Raquez McElderry, it's a heck of a change to
just as soon Montgomery, as we get it down pat.
And it's easier. But now it's like, who the heck is that?
All right, Jimmy, let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little Bama and Tennessee tonight. And we're back. Yesterday, we talked about Charles Bediako dealing with Darlene has a call. Darlene has a call. Why I need to know that it's unknown to me.
Darlene Rock Montgomery on one.
We call her Darlene Quiz.
Arlene McElderry. Rock McHenry's on the
It
phone.
doesn't matter. That just went nowhere. But anyway, yesterday we talked about Charles Bediako and the rumors of a knee injury. And it turns out, I mean, Nate Oats came out after we recorded the podcast and said, okay, there is a little knee issue. He's day to day, as one of the hosts on Sports say, aren't we all? And I don't know if he'll play tonight, but Tennessee could be without a couple of guys tonight too. So that's interesting. I find it kind of interesting that Tennessee is a 2.5-point favorite. And at first I was like, man, how are they 2.5-point favorite? And then I to think about it, if I were making the line, I'm like, that's probably what I would do. I mean, eventually Alabama's going to lose a game. And if you're going to lose one, this is probably it. So I understand where it's coming from. And also, you can look at it from two perspectives. You're scared to death Tennessee is going to come out with their hair on fire because of these two last-second losses they've had that are just heartbreaking. Or you could go the other way and say this team may be completely crestfallen and they may not show up at all. If you were going to go that route, I'd say make Alabama about a 5 or 6 point favorite. But the line is Tennessee minus 2.5, minus 3. I don't even know which way I'd go, Jimmy. I'm a little concerned because Tennessee plays monster defense. Here's the thing. I think Auburn played pretty doggone good defense on us Saturday, and we were able to overcome it because of our length in the paint. We shot very poorly from beyond the arc, 6 of 21. We're not going to have that advantage on Tennessee. They got some big dudes that can hang with our big dudes. And one of our big dudes may not even be playing. We don't know yet. So that's what worries me about tonight. We cannot have another 6 for 21 performance. And Tennessee's 3-point defense is amazing.
The way I look at it is, we don't really have to pick the game. Well, I got to pick the game for Bama Insider a little later. I'm probably going to pick a 1-point win for Alabama, which, by the way, is code for I'm worried we're going to lose. but here's the thing. If you're picking Alabama to win, Luke, if you're a guy out there and you're like, Alabama's going to win this game. They just lost to Vanderbilt, Missouri. So Alabama's going to win this game. I don't disagree, and Alabama might win the game, and I believe I'm going to pick Alabama to win the game. But the point is, if you're picking Alabama to win, then what you're saying is Alabama's going to go 18-0. What game? If you're picking a game, or you're not picking Alabama to win. I mean, this is the most likely loss on the schedule, and I'm not talking about the schedule remaining. I'm talking about go back. Let's redo the whole season. Go back to game 1 of the SEC season. This is the most likely loss on the Alabama schedule because it's the best team in the SEC that's not Alabama. In my opinion, it is. I think Tennessee's better than Texas A&M, who's about to hit a really rough stretch of games, by the way. So I think Tennessee's the second best team in the league behind Alabama. So if Alabama's going to lose, this is the one, like you said it earlier. So I won't be surprised if Alabama ends up a little short in this one. The only thing that will surprise me or disappoint me is if it's an Oklahoma thing where Alabama's sort of non-competitive. That will be disappointing and surprising, and I don't think it would happen. But a close loss at Tennessee is not going to change how I feel about how good this team is or its chances to do.
And you and I talked about earlier in the podcast about how we don't want Tennessee to beat us as number one team twice in one season of football and basketball. Yeah. But we weren't number one when they beat us in football. We were number 3. We did start out the year number 1, so our streak of being number 1 on an annual basis is still alive, but we weren't number 1 when they beat us. That should be noted. Josiah, Jordan James, and Julian Phillips may both miss for seed night. Those are 2 really good players that if they're both out, it certainly helps Alabama's cause. But I just pulled up Tennessee 24/7's site. They predict Alabama to win by 8 tonight. Now again, maybe that's sort of like reverse jinxing the thing. I don't know. They seem to be a little bit down on their own squad for right now. And Tennessee has not been playing very well. I thought, and one of their predictions was Alabama will hold Tennessee below 70 points. And my thought was, duh. I mean, they are not a great scoring team. Now watch them come out tonight and burn the nets up, whatever. I will still maintain that, just like I've maintained Auburn shooting team despite what they did to Missouri last night. Auburn came out like we've talked about, they've been having a rough patch, but they came out with their hair on fire, desperate, and played really hard. And Missouri is just not good on the interior. And if they're not shooting well, they'll get buried. And that's exactly what happened. I'd be willing to bet that Auburn follows up that performance against Missouri with a poor shooting performance this upcoming weekend at Vanderbilt. That's where not only is playing at Vanderbilt very difficult because of the configuration of the court, but also Vanderbilt's got big men, and I think that was one of the things that helped Auburn this past game. But
they're playing well too. Vandy's playing really well. A
couple of
crazy good. Off the radar SEC teams playing really well are Vanderbilt and Mississippi State. I don't know that they're going to make the NCAA tournament, either one, but they're playing like NCAA tournament teams right now.
Two key games tonight besides Alabama, Tennessee. Arkansas at Texas A&M. By the way, if you're wondering, you're an Arkansas fool tonight. Number one, we play them twice, so it would help our net. I don't think that's a big deal right now because the record's so good. But you want Texas A&M to lose a game, whether we lose or win, it will help us. And then Kentucky at Mississippi State. I'm from Mississippi State because we play Mississippi State twice. Again, it helps our strength of schedule should they beat them. And I would like to see Mississippi State get in the tournament. And I also think it's kind of funny if Calipari misses it. So, I'm pro Kentucky, pro Arkansas, pro Bama tonight. There's another game, I think Ole Miss at Florida, which has no bearing on really anything. But anyway, Jimmy, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We will do a Locked On Now after the Tennessee game tonight. So we'll have that for you. And appreciate you, man. Get some people to subscribe. We love you guys. Please keep subscribing. You guys are the best. And we'll talk to you again soon. Go check out his basketball. And until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.